Persistence is key. Isn't that one of the mottos of being an athlete, that you just keep pushing through and keep trying to get to the next level? I think when you have an injury like this, it's important to accept where you are at the moment and keep moving forward. I'd always been very active. I loved running. And then after my accident, I couldn't do that. And that being taken away from me was a huge component. I would see people like running on the street and I would have like very displaced anger in my heart. I'd be like, oh, they're running. Why can't I? I'll never forget it. I made a choice in that moment that I was not going to let this rule my life. I was not going to take pain pills for it. I wanted intentionally a way that was holistic, that was going to truly help me heal without covering the Band-Aid that a pill would. You had my best interests at heart, and that makes all the difference in the world. Moving forward in a positive, constructive way.
Hey, fitness and health fans. It's time to get your game on and crush it with Coach Marghella in another episode of Sporting Good Fitness. Join us for the podcast that will coach you from the sidelines to keep you on your game no matter what health or fitness game you play.
Hey, I'm Coach Marghella. I'm sporting good fitness. What are you sporting?
Hey, Coach Marghella. What do you have for us today?
Welcome back to another episode of Sporting Good Fitness. This is Coach Marghella, and I'm here today with Lilian Palmer. She was actually a former patient in my office, and I wanted her on today to just tell you a little bit about what happened to her and kind of how we met. And Lilian, I just want to introduce you. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, also how you came about coming into the office back in 2013.
Hello, everybody. Good morning. And Dr. Marghella, thank you for having me on today. We were talking this morning. I can't believe it was 2013. That seems so long ago.
I know.
But yes, I actually found when you were working over at Dixon Chiropractic Center through my mother, who's also a school teacher. But why I needed you was because I had been teaching in Costa Rica. So I had gotten my dream job. So this is, I think I was 28, 29, and I was living in New York at the time, and I got this opportunity to go help the University of Science and Technology start an arts program. That's kind of my educational background. My undergrad's in theater and my master's is in education, and this was like the perfect culmination of the two. And I always knew that I wanted to live abroad, and especially in a Spanish-speaking country, because I really wanted to speak Spanish, and I'm not the best at language learning in a classroom setting, so I thought the only way to do it is to go there and live it and experience it. And I was so excited, and it was a wonderful, wonderful opportunity. While I was there, I would also teach at an elementary school in the daytime. So I had just gotten off a bus. There was like a small pickup truck in front, the bus I had just gotten off of, and then an 18-wheeler behind it. And the only reason for the stoplight was essentially the crosswalk. So it was stopped, and this motorcyclist decided that he did not want to sit behind that traffic, and so he was whipping around at the red light to get around, and that's when he hit me and launched me into oncoming traffic. But you know, when that sort of thing happens, I had all this adrenaline. I was supposed to give a math exam that morning, so I popped up immediately. I had to get out of the road, and so somebody else, not the guy, he was a hit and run, but somebody else pulled over and was like, are you okay, and I was like, yeah, I'm totally fine. So I went in the bodega, got myself like a Costa Rican energy drink called like a battery, which I'm sure is horrible for your body, and I walked around the corner, and everything in Costa Rica is gated, especially, schools, of course, for safety reasons. And The woman at the gate, the secretary who lets people in, was like, just looked at me and was like, are you okay? And I guess I had like that shock on my face. And then I realized I couldn't respond to her in Spanish, and I was like, I couldn't find my words. So she was like, come in, sit down. And the moment I sat down, it was over. It was instantly over. And they rushed me to the hospital, and they did some x-rays because they were concerned that my hip was shattered.
Yeah.
Which, luckily, it wasn't. I mean, to get injured is horrible, but I mean, my injuries, like you saw, and we'll talk about it in a little bit, I mean, they couldn't have been better for what the situation was. So I tried to stay down there because, I just had that gut feeling that if I left, it was going to be over. I wasn't going to come back. And I had worked so hard to get there. So before I left Costa Rica, I had gone to this small little town called Coweta. And I mean, there's nothing there. And I was living in this, my friend had this like shack, and I would literally try to hobble across the street and like let the water, just the waves, come over my body a little bit. And at that time, I was taking some pain pills that were prescribed to me, but I would wake up feeling, kind of depressed the next day, and I was just like, why am I even taking these? But in that little town, I saw this man who also had a cane, and I had ventured out one day. I was having a good pain day, and I had ventured out a little bit to this restaurant, and he saw me and recognized he was an expat as well, and he was like, what's going on with you? Asking me about my injuries. But he was one of those people where, like, his energy is just kind of abrasive, and he was just so angry at the world, and he was talking about all these pills he was on and how the world did this to him and what a victim he was, and then got on the phone and started yelling at whoever was on the other line. And I'll never forget it. I made a choice in that moment that I was not going to be that man. Like, that I was not going to let this rule my life. I was not going to take pain pills for it to solve it, because it wasn't even doing anything anyways. And I just remember thinking, I don't want to become that man. So when I came back to the States, I wanted intentionally a way that was holistic, that was going to truly help me heal without covering the Band-Aid that a pill would.
That's the chiropractic message right there. I mean, that's exactly what it is treating the cause, not the symptoms. And I'm glad you made that choice, and fate just kind of brought you in my office that day. I remember it. I think that we did a rotation of patients. So if somebody came in and didn't have a specific doctor, they would just get a rotation of the 3 doctors that were there. I believe it just happened to be my turn that day, and that's how I ended up being your doctor. So it just worked out really well.
Well, I could not be more grateful.
Well, I remember when you came in and we did the exam and we took the x-rays. My goodness, I couldn't believe how unlevel your pelvis was and how bad your hip had been. And it wasn't broken, like you said, but it was just so out of position that, and even your tailbone, your sacrum, everything was just kind of slanted to the side. And I knew we had a lot of work to do, and I could tell that you had been suffering for a while there, and I know you said nothing had really helped. So as we started treating you, what did you start noticing, when we started treating you? What were the differences you felt after we started treating you?
Yes, like you said, like my tailbone was almost sideways. My left hip, you had said, was rotated 1.5 inches back into the left. I had that soft tissue trauma to my thigh that had completely atrophied, and that ligament in my knee. So I couldn't support my body weight, and it was just continuing to rotate the bad way. So I think, you were so kind, and I think feeling comfortable was a huge thing, because if anybody who's in chronic pain, the mental and emotional fatigue is also a huge factor that you don't really think about until you experience it. And so being able to come into a place where, like, you would give me a hug when I got there, and then we would go, I felt safe, and I felt like you had my best interests at heart, and that makes all the difference in the world. But as I started to heal...
You had good days and bad days. I remember there'd be times where, it was getting better, and then you'd have almost like a relapse.
Yes. Yeah. And then you never...
It was a weird recovery process. Definitely the most unique I've seen of any of my patients over the years.
And sometimes I would leave feeling awesome and like 10 pounds lighter in my back and hips, and then sometimes I would just leave and have to go back to bed. It was just an odd sort of, we pushed through it. It was crazy.
Yeah, and so you were working at, was it a restaurant or a bar at the time too?
While I was getting my master's at Lipscomb, I was working at Quarter Pub in the Woods out in Bellevue. So a little plug for them, y'all go out there. They're the kindest people. And so when I came back, they were so nice to let me, quote, I'm using quotation marks in my hands, I know you can't see me, but run food for as long as I could, which would be 20 minutes before I needed my cane again and had to sit down, to try to build back my stamina, to help me recover, because I wanted to teach, but I was so irritable all the time because I had so much pain. So I didn't have the patience that I wanted to have going back into the classroom. So that way, if I was having a bad pain day, I could call out and get somebody to cover my shift and whatever. But they were so kind to help let me literally work for 20 minutes if that's all I could do that day to help get back in recovery.
It was almost like doing extra PT basically for you.
Right. Yes. And forcing me to walk.
I remember the rest of that year and even into 2014, after a year later, what did you notice then, with your recovery process?
To me, I'm such an emotional person. I am a drama teacher. So I think so much of it was like emotional. Like I will always remember the day where I went into CVS and I left my cane in the car, and it took me like 45 minutes to buy a tube of mascara, but I went by myself and I did it without my cane. Like, to me, those sort of victories were huge milestones for me. And then, of course, naturally, that independence where I can start walking longer periods by myself. Chronic pain just did a number on me. So regaining my life back and getting the strength, not physically, but overall, to reclaim and get back on a new, moving forward in a positive, constructive way.
And I tell you, I learned a lot from you too, just because I had never really had somebody that was such a traumatic thing happen that both affected, mentally and physically for so long, because most of the patients I had would get better pretty quickly. So this was such a unique case. And every time you came in, we would do different therapies on you, different kinds of adjustments. I swear there was no visit that was really the same. Sometimes we wouldn't even do much at all. Sometimes there was visits we wouldn't really adjust you. We would just do some therapies on you. But, everything, we just kind of went with how the day was going. And I tried to see what you needed the most that day. And sometimes we would sit there and talk. And I could tell you were frustrated just trying to get things off your chest, just because I could tell you were just trying to get through the day. And it made me really realize what it's like for someone to have pain all the time. It was a really good lesson for me to see that too, because myself, I never had a big injury that lingered so long, so I didn't have that kind of experience like you had. So I thank you too, because it taught me a lot about how to help people with ongoing pain situations.
No, and that's what was awesome. Yeah, like you said, if sometimes I was in too much pain to get adjusted, so we would just do some stem or something, and then sometimes that stem they would put it on and I'd be like, nope, not today. This is not going to work today, and we would just do laser or whatever it was. Being able to change it up depending on what my body needed that day was huge.
And I know you had been into exercising before you got injured, and then you were finally able to start doing some of that again after you started feeling better. I remember you started just trying to go back to the gym and even just walking distances, and I knew that you had made big strides on exercise.
Physical activity has always been so important to me. Like, I was a competitive gymnast growing up. I played softball my whole life. When I was living in New York, I did Insanity and P90X when all those first came out. So I'd always been very active. I loved running. And then after my accident, I couldn't do that. And that being taken away from me was a huge component. And there was also a huge drive to get it back. I would see people running on the street, and I would have very displaced anger in my heart. I'd be like, oh, they're running. Why can't I? But that was also a huge factor to get back on my feet and to be able to do those things. I just completed Insanity again earlier this year for the first time. Since then, I remember I called you, I think, at the end of last year, because I ran 3 miles, and it was the first time I had done that. And then now I'm at 10 miles. I can run. So, it's huge. I don't live with that chronic pain anymore. Now, that doesn't mean I don't feel it every now and then, but gosh, to not be able to walk and to be able to run 10 miles, I credit all of that to you. I'm so grateful for you for truly giving me my life back.
Well, I really appreciate you saying that. It means a lot for me to hear that. Those are the kind of things I really want to do for people, more. You had a really unique case. It's not every day someone comes in with such an extreme injury, but I admire you for sticking with it, because it took a couple years really for us when we were treating you. And there was sometimes I'm like, man, am I even helping her? Because I was frustrated too, because I was thinking, man, I wish that it was better by now, or better than I thought it should be. I appreciated you just, sticking with it and doing whatever you could, whether it was for 5 minutes or 20 minutes or just 2 minutes, walking or just I really enjoyed having you come in the office, and I definitely missed when you left to go to Florida. I'm really glad to hear that you are back to, almost back to where you were before the accident, because I know it's a long journey for you.
Yeah, and just a side note, those insoles that you gave me for my shoes were a game changer in my running.
I knew they would be.
Yeah.
And I remember we didn't even get a chance to talk about that because you came by the office, my new office, last year. I was like, you need these. Let's do this. I remember I said, just trust me. That's so cool. So what has your experience been with those insoles?
Well, I probably need a new pair because since I teach theater, I do teach a lot of dance too. And we just did Footloose, so I was dancing for 5 hours every day. And so I would wear those insoles. Yeah, it took a little bit of getting used to, but once you get used to them, I mean, it's awesome. It's awesome.
Yeah, and I got the ones for you that really cushion your joints, and I knew you'd be running or trying to run more. So, yeah, so actually, well, when you come up here again, if you want, if you need another one, come by the office. We'll get you a new pair.
Yeah, I probably should.
They even have flip-flops now. They have a whole series. I'll show you when you come in. It's pretty cool.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, for sure.
Well, I really appreciate you taking the time out today to talk to us. And you've been an awesome patient over the years, and I hope we can see more of you. And I'm just so glad that you're pretty much back to where you were pre-accident because I know it's been a long journey for you.
It was, but thank you for helping me through it. I mean, I truly don't know what I would have done without you. So anytime you need anything, please call me and let me do this for you so I can give back in some way.
Thank you. Well, thank you again, and I look forward to seeing you this summer.
Great.
So, Lily, I just want to ask you, what would you say to somebody that's kind of been in this similar situation that maybe, whether they're active or not, or just trying to get back to where their life was, what would you say to somebody that's kind of in a similar position?
I mean, persistence is key, and isn't that one of the mottos of being an athlete in some regard, that you just keep pushing through and keep trying to get to the next level? I think when you have an injury like this, it's important to accept it. Accept where you are at the moment and keep moving forward. Because if you don't accept it, that's when the frustration creeps in. That's when the doubt creeps in. That's when the, why am I even doing this? I should just give up. This is too painful. But to keep pushing through with that hope that you will get back to that place. I think that's all you can do at the moment, is to accept, acknowledge this is where my body is right now. What can I do to get my body to the next level tomorrow? And keep going.
Wow, I couldn't have said it better myself. I really appreciate you taking the time out today to speak to our listeners, and I look forward to seeing you over the summer. Thanks again for doing this interview today.
Oh, it's been absolutely my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Anytime. So for the takeaway today, it really goes down to what you do as far as your attitude. And really, Lily is a great example of that. She's a great example of why it's good not to give up, because in her case, it really took years. The whole idea is if you just stick with it, eventually it's going to work. Now, most of the time it doesn't take years, but in her case, because it was such a severe case, it did. And I admire her perseverance and really her attitude through the whole thing, because she was so emotional with this, but she really kept it together and really had a happy vibe about her every time I saw her, and really tried as much as she could to make the best out of a bad situation. And her not giving up was just a testimony to what her fortitude really was going through this. Again, if you've had some chronic pain, finding the cause is what it's all about. And when you find the cause and you can fix the cause of the problem, that's where it's at. True health comes from the inside out, not the outside in. And once you find that cause, everything else kind of falls into place. And even if it's gone on for years, it usually can be something that can be reversed. So even if you're out there and you're maybe just stressed from work and you don't really have a lot of pain, there's been a lot of people that have come in the office over the years that don't have any pain at all, but they have some kind of sleeping issue or some kind of thyroid problem or maybe some infertility or, whatever it is. It doesn't always mean you have to be in severe pain, but if something is dysfunctioning, again, it's always good to find the cause of the problem. And especially if you're an athlete, you always want your body working at its optimal level. So if anything is interfering with that, it's always going to affect your performance. So that's why I highly recommend just get checked out, just at least find out what it is so you know a better way to fix it. So if you'd like to learn more about Lily, go to sportinggoodfitness.com/Lily, that's Lily, and you can learn more about her story and just a little bit more about her. I hope that you enjoyed another episode. Once again, this has been another great episode of Sporting Good Fitness. I'm Coach Marghella. I'm Sporting Good Fitness. How about you?
Thank you, Coach Marghella, for another thrilling episode.
Sporting Good Fitness is a broadcast wellness production powered by Ideal Health and Wellness Center in Franklin. Executive producer, Frank Sardella. Dr. Marghella appears courtesy of Ideal Health and Wellness Center, copyright 2018, all rights reserved. For more information, visit sportinggoodfitness.com.